it is so prosecutorial ethics 101 that it's not permitted. And when I see it happening again and again in this godforsaken administration, it's like chewing on aluminum foil. Okay, so I'll try to recover my composure and go to your second point. The case is going nowhere. The guy, by the way, I don't know, he's a 66-year-old, very kind of impressive, composed former Olympian. He says he reached in to touch to see what it feels like. And they're going to have what? They're going to have, as you say, witnesses who came there to celebrate the 250th anniversary. I think there are about 11 of those. Who are going to say, what? He ripped it out with his bare hands and did, okay, so where is the evidence? What happened to this stuff? Why would he lie so clearly? You go there and you've heard all about it. You're not looking to damage it. You're looking to figure out what the hell and how has this debacle kind of happened. And then that's the third point. The Washington, the DC statute that they've charged him under requires that it be malicious, looking to damage, all the things that Trump is saying. I don't see a world in which they have this evidence. And, this will probably be one of those cases that never even proceeds to a verdict. But if so, it's like Sandwich Guy, once again, they're going to be humiliated. They must know they're going to be humiliated. And it's just the initial effort of, is it to please Trump or before July 4th or what, to come out and make these scurrilous charges. But this is the agency that's entrusted with complying with constitutional rights, the presumption of innocence and the like. And to see Jeanine Pirro just basically saying, trust me, I got some real great witnesses there and we know nothing about them. As you mentioned, the discovery here, the Brady material, you're the Midas Mighty all know this. I think the Fed heads as well, but you got to turn over anything you have that tends to be exculpatory. If it comes to it, the cross-examination of these witnesses, man, oh man, this is a case that is really, heading straight to a crash against a wall. And, they've got, there are some people who've been charged who this would be ruinous for. This seems to be one of the guys who's like, bring it on. He's got really solid lawyers from the public interest community. So I don't even think, we talked about Jack Smith in another video and how he seemed completely calm about the whole prospect. I think that's what you're going to find out about this guy. They really did pick on the wrong guy. But the main thing is they picked the wrong case because they don't have any fucking evidence. And for her to go out and just talk about it like that is just a complete dereliction.
Let me predict what happens, though. Everybody's still talking about the Don Lemon criminal case. No. Why? Because the Trump regime then designates it complex. They say they can't pull out the documents. They do delays and they delay. And then there's motions and then there's this or there that. And so this is the Trump cycle. This is what he did with his regular litigation. They bring out Jeanine Pirro, the corrupt Fox host turned prosecutor, whatever. She does that on and on and on and on and on. They get their headline. I bet you, let me predict every move. They're so easy to predict. They're bringing bullshit cases against a bunch of other people too. So now they're going to say it's a complex case where they want to combine it or consolidate it or put it on a track like that. So then they're going to say, well, it's not its normal fast track. And then they're going to say we need more time for discovery. Then we're going to get motions from David Hearn and his lawyer saying, no, we want to speed it. They're not turning over this or that or the other things. There's different fights. The judge orders against them. They say the judge is against us and it's unfair.
Trump was moving the boxes basically, going through the boxes basically himself as though he were like, turning the door in the garage at the Watergate. People wanted to send Richard Nixon to jail for what was kind of a cryptic comment in the Smoking Gun tape about, well, we could get the CIA to tell the FBI to back off. And that was like, oh, he knew about the cover-up. And that was the thing, that was the smoking gun that led.
Here is a campaign ad that opens with 2 words, spoken directly into the camera, aimed at a sitting president of the United States, in a spot that would go on to be replayed, dissected, and argued over across cable news and social media for weeks after it first aired. Hi, Donald. That is Geoge Conway, former elite Wall Street litigator, co-founder of the Lincoln Project, and, for over 2 decades, the husband of one of Trump's own most senior White House advisors. Addressing Trump by first name, like an old acquaintance settling a score, in a 60-second television spot that would go on to define one of the strangest, most personally charged congressional campaigns of the entire 2026 midterm cycle. It's me, Geoge Conway, he continues. I cost you $88 million dollars, and I've only just gotten started. Welcome to USA Press. Tonight we are tracing the real, fully documented war between Geoge Conway and Donald Trump. A fight that spans a presidential defamation judgment, a campaign built entirely around the promise of a 3rd impeachment, a Hitler in the bunker comparison delivered on a national podcast, and Trump's own unhinged 2:38 a.m. meltdown after Conway's campaign came to its actual electoral end. And we're closing with what's happened around Trump in just the past several days, because a war with Iran just took a genuinely alarming turn while we were putting this together. Let's get into it. Let's start with who Geoge Conway actually is, because his background is what makes this feud so uniquely uncomfortable for Trump. Conway is not some random online troll or a career political operative looking for relevance. He spent decades as one of the most respected litigators at Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen, and Katz, one of the most prestigious law firms in the entire country.
Various infrastructure within the facility have been recorded. Here's a closer view of the fire over there. And this was probably 2,500 kilometers away from Ukraine. And lots of people are saying that the way these drones had to attack, they actually went 3,500 kilometers to attack from a direction that Russia didn't expect. Let me show you the Omsk refinery. And again, this is one of the biggest refineries in all of Russia. Here, let's play this.
Ебашут еще беспилотник второй.
Смотри, сука.
Стреляет отовсюду.
Смотри.
Вот он, бах, блядь.
Блядь, ты видел?
Туда же. Ебать ее в рот, нахуй.
So then Donald Trump said, as it relates to Russia's war on Ukraine, I think we're getting much closer than people realize. I think we're getting much closer to solving it. We're very close to getting a deal. Promised he would get it done, not just on day 1, but 24 hours after the election. The guy lies about everything. Here, play this clip.
I think we're getting much closer than people realize, and President Putin wants it to end. I will tell you that very strongly. A good call. And President Zelensky actually wants it to end now. And we're going to be going to NATO, and we're going to be talking about it. And I think we're going to get it. I think we're going to get it ended. It's been terrible.
And then he goes on to brag about calling up Gianni Infantino, the head of FIFA, and having FIFA reverse a red card against one of the top U.S. players. UEFA put out a statement on Fowler and Balogun getting the red card reversed and playing in tonight's game. Here's what Donald Trump had to say. You know, if Belgium beats us, they could be proud, but otherwise the refs were rigging it against the United States like the 2020 election, Donald Trump says.
A big committee. And after reviewing it, I think they said, look, this game would have a big mark on it. If we lost, if we won, no matter what happened, you have to let them use their best players. And the game tonight's going to be amazing, and we're going to have a full team, and Belgium's going to have a full team. And you know what? If they beat us, then they can be really proud. The other way, if they beat us, we'll say I say it was rigged, just like the election was rigged in 2020, but I won't get into that. Ladies and gentlemen.
And then Ted Cruz was bragging about Donald Trump getting the red card reversed. This hadn't happened, I think, ever in FIFA history, reversing a red card, and a red card that was then confirmed on the review. Here's what Ted Cruz has to say.
And on behalf of all Americans, thank you for getting rid of that ridiculous red card. This is his. That was interesting. It was spectacular. There was a reason the FIFA trophy sat here for as long as it did. Mr. President,
Here's the statement from the European Football Federation. Statement on decision related to Fowler and Balogun. Yesterday's decision to suspend a probationary period, a year. The implementation of the one-match automatic suspension following the red card issued to Fowler and Balogun crossed a red line. Football, like any other sport, relies on rules, which are the basis for fair, honest, and transparent competition. Sometimes rules are open to interpretation, in this case not. At a minimum, automatic suspension of one match following a red card is not a discretionary option and does not require the decision of a competent body to be enacted. And it goes on to criticized the decision. Meanwhile, you had Benjamin Netanyahu going on state regime media Fox this morning and saying that only Israel should be able to have F-35s and not Turkey or no one else in the Middle East because, he says, the entire security infrastructure of the Middle East relies on Israel and the United States imposing its military will, and that you shouldn't give F-35s to any other countries. Here's what he says.
I don't think...
Whitsett, North Carolina. Mark on the Trump-Vance line. You're on with George Conway.
Yeah, I'm a little bit disturbed about the double standards you're applying on what you're saying. For example, you dismissed Joe Biden's comments about calling all of Trump's supporters garbage, and that's what he said.
He did not say that, caller. He did not. He did not. He said that the racism, the disgusting comments about Hispanics were objection. I read the quote too, sir. You're just wrong, and I know you want to believe that's what he said. But by the way, he's not running for president. The other guy is.
Mark, did you want to respond?
To call Trump a fascist, calling his supporters fascist. I'm not a fascist. I'm a freedom-loving Republican. And for you to say that Trump supporters are fascists...
Arguing before the Supreme Court and building a reputation as a serious, credentialed, conservative legal mind. He co-founded the Lincoln Project, the anti-Trump Republican organization that became one of the most aggressive and well-funded opposition operations of the Trump era. And for over 2 decades, he was married to Kellyanne Conway, the woman who ran Trump's 2016 campaign to victory and served as one of his most visible and trusted senior advisors throughout his first term in the White House. Think about the sheer strangeness of that domestic arrangement for a moment. While Kellyanne Conway stood behind podiums defending Trump's policies and managing his message to the American public, her own husband was, according to extensive reporting at the time, simultaneously building a national reputation as one of Trump's most relentless and legally sophisticated public critics. A dynamic so bizarre that Trump himself, according to multiple reports from that period, took to calling George Conway husband from hell, unable to fully comprehend how one of his most loyal aides could be married to one of his most persistent adversaries. The Conways divorced in 2023 after 22 years of marriage, in what was reported at the time as an amicable split. But George Conway's public campaign against Trump did not soften after the divorce. If anything, freed from any remaining institutional connection to Trump's orbit, it intensified. Now let's talk about the specific, documented history that gives Conway's criticism its teeth. Because unlike a lot of celebrity feuds we've covered on this channel, this one is built on Conway's direct, personal involvement in one of Trump's most consequential legal defeats. Conway was among the people who actively encouraged writer E. Jean Carroll to pursue legal action against Trump after she went public with her allegation that he had sexually assaulted her in a department store dressing room decades earlier. That case eventually resulted in a jury finding Trump liable for sexual abuse and defamation, and a subsequent defamation judgment ordering him to pay Carroll $88 million after he continued publicly denying her allegations even after the initial verdict. This is the exact figure Conway references in his campaign ad. I cost you $88 million fiend dollars, and it is not an exaggeration or a boast built on nothing. Conway's involvement in encouraging that lawsuit is documented, and the $88 million judgment against Trump is a matter of public legal record.
Donald Trump launched an attack against the Midas Touch network on his social media platform yesterday. He showed a video that we did. It's an interview with former Attorney General Eric Holder. And then after showing that video where Donald Trump attacked Holder and attacked our interview, Trump went on a posting spree with over 400 400 posts within a 1 hour period. I'll just show it to you here and I'll speed it up so you can see the quantity of posts he was making. And he made these posts last night around midnight. 400 posts within an hour, post after post, and some of the most deranged posts you could ever imagine, even by Trump standards. So here was Trump's attack on the Midas Touch Network for our interview with former Attorney General Eric Holder. You see right here, you see the Midas Touch logo from his post, and Trump goes, Obama sycophant, the former Attorney General who did so much to hurt our country and who weaponized against the Republicans and me, known as Fast and Furious, just gave a speech where he emphatically stated above all else, the Democrats will pack the Supreme Court of the United States if they get any chance. The word is he wants 21 radical left activist judges. Not being satisfied, he then goes on to say that the American people don't want gridlock, terminate the filibuster, and have the most successful 4 years in the history of our country. And again, he shows the interview that I did with former Attorney General Holder. I want to show you now what Trump was posting in those 400 post after post after post after launching that attack on us for our interview with former Attorney General Eric Holder. Just a reminder, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel right now. We've got Trump attacking us. We got Fox attacking us. We're leading all independent media right now. We're about to hit 6 million subscribers. You may think you're subscribed, but you may not have actually hit the subscribe button. So please hit the subscribe button right now. So here are the types of posts that Donald Trump is making in those 400 posts. He posts this: wild. Michelle Obama may have used Biden's auto pen in the final days of his disastrous administration to pardon key individuals. So Trump is now spreading a conspiracy that the former First Lady Michelle Obama was actually running the White House. I mean, what in the world is he talking about? Then Trump posts the following: John Brennan was never for the American people, especially with his communist background and traitorous actions, from being labeled an assassination czar for Obama's secret drone strike program to running a weekly Tuesday morning kill list with Obama and openly claiming to be Muslim. John Brennan is not someone you can trust, leading torture programs. He lied about the amount of civilians that were being targeted and killed under Obama. You see what Trump's doing here? He knows that he and Pete Hegseth have been caught committing horrific war crimes. By the way, their whole operation off the coast of Venezuela are war crimes, and now they've been caught with the double tap or double strike war crimes, and they don't know what to do, and they are flailing, and finally, you seem to have at least some degree of bipartisan demand for accountability of the Trump regime war crimes with Hegseth as they try to throw the admiral who was put in that position under the bus. Just look at some more of these posts that Trump was posting. I mean, this is quite literally, I don't know, psychotic. I mean, I'm not trying to use that word lightly. He's posting breathing out CO2 essential for plants and life, framed as planetary poison, even consciousness itself, unconscious bias you can never fully escape. I mean, it's just the ranting and ravings of a lunatic. Then he reposts this: I'm sick and tired of this fucking pirates, excuse my language. They invade, rob us blind, impose Sharia bullshit, and milk the taxpayers dry with nonstop fraud after fraud. Meanwhile, there's unlimited cash for these inbred savages, but jack shit for our own veterans sleeping on the streets. You're the one defunding the VA, by the way. You're the one ripping away healthcare from people. But this is what Trump's posting. 400 different posts like this. Then Trump posts the following: Donald Trump is not a Democrat. He's not even a Republican. He's a movement. The greatest president to ever live is what he's posting. And then Donald Trump posts an AI video of the president of Venezuela, Maduro, surrendering to Donald Trump. And Trump writes, breaking: Venezuelan president just publicly surrendered to President Trump. Maduro has now turned in state evidence against the Biden administration and is releasing proof that the Biden asked the Venezuelan government to ship Tren de Aragua drug gangs into the U.S. This is obvious AI that Donald Trump, the president of the United States, is posting, saying that the president of Venezuela surrendered. This is legitimately insane. This is beyond 25th Amendment territory. This man belongs in a straitjacket right now. Then he continues to make these posts. I mean, look at this one. He goes, fraud, the 2020 election stolen. Then he goes on to say there are many ways to rig elections that are being exploited with operations in places including Canada, Brazil, Australia, South Korea, and the Congo, he says. Then it posts like this, John Brennan, enemy of the people, with photos of Brennan and former President Obama. Now, what's going on here? Why is Donald Trump panicking and freaking out like this? Well, his regime...
I think it'll stop him from talking about her.
Maybe for a few hours, maybe for a few days. We've seen it before. We've seen him say and do outrageous things. And early on in his presidency, we'd see him say the most insane things. And then all of a sudden, he'd tamp it down for a few hours and read from a teleprompter. And they'd say, oh, this is the new Donald Trump. Well, there is no new Donald Trump. The Donald Trump that you see today is the same Donald Trump that people who have been watching him closely for years and who I unfortunately had to watch over the last several years. It's the same Donald Trump. He is, as Judge Kaplan, the presiding judge in this case, said, he's somebody who can't control himself. And he can't control himself because he's a deeply disturbed, a deeply morally bereft human being who has no conscience, has no morality, has no empathy, has no remorse, and is sadistic, as we saw during the trial, and as the jurors saw in the trial, right in front of their very eyes, that he had nothing but contempt for the woman that he raped and libeled and defamed so many times. This is a sick man. He is a bad man. And what's most disturbing about this is that so many people make this about politics, that they...
When Conway looks into a camera and tells Trump he cost him that money, he is not inventing a grievance. He is citing an actual, adjudicated legal outcome that he had a real hand in setting into motion. It's worth adding a couple more data points to this record, because Conway's pre-campaign history of public confrontation with Trump's world is just as revealing as the campaign itself. Reporting has documented that Conway was once heckled at a Federalist Society event, the influential conservative legal organization he himself had once been closely associated with as a member of the same elite legal establishment, simply for mentioning, accurately, that Trump is a convicted felon and that he did not appear rattled in the slightest by the reaction. He also purchased a billboard reading "Vote for Joe Not the Psycho," which he placed as close to Mar-a-Lago as he could geographically manage, a small but telling act of guerrilla political theater that predates his formal congressional run by years and establishes that his eventual campaign was less a sudden pivot than the logical culmination of a long-running personal project. If you're finding this history as sharp as we do, hit that like button right now and subscribe to USA Press. Because this is exactly the kind of receipts-first breakdown we live for, tracing a real feud built on documented legal outcomes rather than manufactured drama. Share this with someone who only knows the Kellyanne's ex-husband version of this story. Now let's get into the campaign itself. Because in January of 2026, George Conway did something that surprised even longtime observers of his very public Trump obsession. He filed to run for Congress. Not as a Republican, the party he had spent decades as a member of before Trump's rise, but as a Democrat, entering a crowded primary field for New York's 12th congressional district, the Manhattan seat being vacated by longtime Democratic Representative Jerry Nadler, and, notably, a district that sits inside Trump's own hometown. Conway's campaign platform was, by his own explicit description, built around a single, central promise, pursuing what he called Trump's third and final impeachment if elected, and putting him away for good. In a campaign advertisement that generated enormous attention, Conway stood in front of the United States Capitol, building itself, and delivered a line dripping with theatrical menace. And you see that building back there. That's where we're going to hold your third and final impeachment trial, the one that's going to put you away for good, and I'm going to enjoy every minute of that. This was not subtle campaigning. Conway was not running primarily on housing policy or infrastructure or constituent services, though he did discuss those issues when pressed by reporters. He was running, first and foremost, on the explicit promise of ending Trump's presidency through impeachment and, in his own words, imprisonment. It's worth quoting Conway's own campaign messaging in more detail here, because the language he chose was considerably more legally precise than typical campaign trail bluster, reflecting his background as an actual practicing attorney rather than a career politician. In one of his campaign ads, he laid out his case against the administration in specific, almost indictment-like terms.
So then Donald Trump is like, well, we're doing very well with Iran. We're doing very well with them. We're just not getting the coverage that we deserve. It's really a media thing that, when I say they're fully destroyed and that the people hate the regime there and that they have no radars and militaries, when media says they have a military, they still control the Strait of Hormuz, you're lying about everything and then show images. Man, that's so unfair to the United States. Here, play this clip.
Hundreds of billions. They have more money than they've ever made. And we're doing very well. We paid for the war many times over. And then Iran, we're doing actually equally as well. We're just not getting the kind of coverage that we should. But we have eviscerated them military. And the bottom line is our country is strong. We have the greatest military anywhere in the world. I was with President Xi.
Then Donald Trump said that nobody ever heard of the Strait of Hormuz before this war. Nobody heard of it. He said, but it's a big money machine. You should learn your history. Everybody knew about the Strait of Hormuz. And by the way, I'll give you another piece of history as well. July 3rd of 1988, when the United States military destroyed an Iranian commercial flight, Iran Air Flight 655, killing 290 people. Yeah, the Iranians remember that, and people remember what went down there anyway. Here, let's play this clip of Donald Trump saying nobody's heard of the Strait of Hormuz.
The Strait and the famous Strait of Hormuz, nobody ever heard of, but that is some big money machine, I'll tell you what, when you look at the numbers, Michael.
And then Donald Trump, showing again how just utterly delusional and pathetic he is, starts to brag about TikTok. He goes, you hear about TikTok? People say that I get better ratings on TikTok than Taylor Swift. Okay, so he's like, terrified of the size of the crowds in Tehran. He's lying and saying that more people watch him on TikTok than anything. And this is what you're saying from the Oval Office. And by the way, this is supposed to be like a press conference on what he calls the Trump accounts, investment accounts for babies, where it invests in S&P 500 ETFs, these exchange traded funds. Here, just play this clip of what he says.
About 2 days ago, the new numbers just came out. You know who the number one person in TikTok is by far? Trump, me. I just got I'm number one. Like Taylor Swift was number 11. I'm number one in TikTok by far.
Then Donald Trump's like, every time I see these crypto guys who are getting rich, I say to them, you're so lucky you got me. You're so lucky because otherwise you'd be under investigation. So you're very lucky you have me. I mean, can the corruption get any more obvious? Let's play it.
They allowed people to come out of jail. And every time I see a crypto guy where they dropped an investigation, I said, you're lucky I'm president, because I don't know if you know, the Biden administration became totally pro-crypto.
Here you have mourners at Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's funeral throwing stones at a billboard of Donald Trump. We can just show you that. Let's play it. And you can see over here, people in Tehran held signs up like this. We will end you, Donald. Thank you for your attention to this matter. If you look in the crowd, you see lots of signs like this. Sooner or later, your heads will roll. And it's a photo of Donald Trump and people in his regime. Mourners throwing, you saw that. Lots of messages, threatening Donald Trump that's out there. Meanwhile, the world's on fire. I did a video this morning. We know this weekend, Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump spoke for 90 minutes. And then shortly thereafter, Putin launched one of his biggest ballistic missile strikes on Kyiv since the war began. I think right now it's over 20 people killed, striking in the heart of Kyiv. By the way, we've also seen, I'll show you the video right here, showing a Ukrainian drone slamming into the Omsk refinery, which is Russia's largest refinery in Ukraine's longest distance drone strike yet.
They are good people.
You said that for 2028, they're very good people.
Well, we have great people. I don't have to get into that, but we have one of them standing right here. We have JD, obviously. The vice president is great. I think Marco's great. I think, I'm not sure if anybody would run against us. I think if they ever formed a group, it would be unstoppable. I really do. I believe that. I would love to do it. I have my best numbers ever. It's very terrible. I have my best numbers. If you read it, am I not?
We have a corrupt president, a mendacious president, a criminal president whose masked agents are disappearing people from our streets, who's breaking international law, and he's running our federal government like a mob protection racket. Notice the structure of that sentence. Corrupt, mendacious, criminal, each word doing distinct legal and rhetorical work rather than functioning as interchangeable insults. Exactly the kind of careful language a litigator trained at one of the country's most prestigious firms would instinctively reach for even in the middle of a passionate campaign speech. It's also worth noting the specific symbolism of the district itself. New York's 12th is not some distant swing district. It is Manhattan, Trump's own hometown, the literal geography where he built his business empire and his public persona decades before politics. Meaning Conway's entire campaign amounted to an attempt to win a congressional seat in the exact neighborhood where Trump's own myth originated. Let's talk about the downfall comparison, because this is where Conway delivered what might be the single most intellectually loaded piece of commentary in this entire feud, and it deserves to be understood in full rather than reduced to a soundbite. Appearing on Molly Jong-Fast's Fast Politics podcast in May of 2026, Conway drew a direct comparison between Trump's behavior and the 2004 German film Downfall, the historically based drama depicting the final days of Adolf Hitler in his Berlin bunker, a film that has become, over the past 2 decades, one of the most widely memed pieces of cinema on the entire internet, primarily through parody subtitles applied to its most famous scene of Hitler's escalating rage as his generals deliver news of the collapsing war effort. This is like the movie Downfall, Conway said. This is what happens when a narcissistic sociopath is cornered. They become more desperate, more delusional, and more dangerous. He then made a specific, numerically framed warning about the trajectory he believed the country was on. He's only going to get worse, not better. And the most important thing to remember for our current circumstance is that we cannot survive 32 months more of what we've seen over the last 16. Conway elaborated on the math behind that warning with real specificity. Not only because what we've seen over the last 16, if you keep adding onto it at the same rate, is terrible and dangerous. I mean, he's done enormous damage to the country, enormous damage to its economy, enormous damage to its standing in the world. But he's going to accelerate in his bizarre delusion. It's worth explaining exactly why the Downfall reference lands the way it does, because the film's cultural footprint gives Conway's comparison a specific, widely understood shorthand that most of his audience would immediately recognize. Downfall, the 2004 German film starring Bruno Ganz as Hitler, became, over the following 2 decades, one of the single most parodied pieces of footage in the entire history of the internet.
They should be given F-35s or the engines for their fighter jets, because that'll upset the power balance in the Middle East, which is ultimately guaranteed by Israeli air superiority and also by, I think, by America's posture in the Middle East.
And then Netanyahu says that the only reason why Iran is still standing is because of goons. A few 100,000 goons, that's why. And otherwise, if it wasn't for these few 100,000 goons, we would have been able to take it over. Donald Trump and Netanyahu would have conquered all of Iran. And you see all the people out there at the funeral who were just ready and willing and so excited to have Netanyahu rule over Iran because they saw the genocide in Gaza and the genocide in Lebanon. And they said, this is precisely what we want. Come on. This is what he's saying this morning. Play this clip.
We've had over 13,000 strikes on them. You've had over 8,000 strikes on them. Why is that government still standing?
Because it has a few 100,000 goons who murder in broad daylight and at night, They murder their own people. They've murdered.
You've got Donald Trump making posts this morning of National Guard, looking at the reflecting pool. By the way, the reflecting pool still looks green today, and it has all this ash from that disastrous fireworks show. Donald Trump making weird posts about himself sitting courtside at a Knicks game from the 1990s. And then he writes, or he reposts someone who says, thanks to Trumponomics, the U.S. economy is hotter than the New York Knicks. Like, why are you making sports so damn weird too and conflating it with the economy, which is bad and where most Americans are suffering right now? Yeah, maybe not Michael Dell, the billionaire who's in there, whose stock went up. You saw Dell behind him after these Trump accounts were announced, and that Dell was going to make a philanthropic investment in the Trump accounts. And then the Dell stock goes up right there. But most Americans are suffering right now, can't afford anything, can't afford homes. Most Americans feel they're going through a Great Depression. But Trump says we're never been hotter. I also want to point this out as well. I'll just show you a little clip of this. We don't need to show the full minute. So last night we had Delcy Rodriguez and Diosdado Cabello giving medals, thanking the U.S. search and rescue teams in La Guerra. We have to get, everything has to be medals now. So we have the authoritarian regime of Venezuela that held up aid to the people of Venezuela following the earthquakes and who did not do a good job in deploying search and rescue teams. There's still tens of thousands of people missing and presumed dead, over or close to 3,000 confirmed dead. That's going to increase dramatically. And now we're handing out medals. And the person handing out the medals while America's like envoy is standing right there is a guy who there was a $25 million bounty on him. But that's the Trump regime for you. That's the Trump regime. Let's play it.
Condecoración Héroes Caninos de Venezuela a los 6 semovientes caninos pertenecientes al equipo USA 02.
Team USA 02, Canine Heroes of Venezuela Award, received by 6 members of this unit.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. ¿Es bravo? ¿Ya? ¿Cómo está?
Sí, tenemos que es mejor. Sí.
Okay.
Muchas gracias. Sí.
No, thank you. Happy Independence Day.
Ah, por el teléfono. Sí.
Líderes del equipo USA 02.
And then the weakness of the Trump regime, obviously, being demonstrated. China sees how weak they are. China's Navy just successfully test-fired a nuclear-capable ballistic missile carrying a training simulation warhead from a strategic submarine into the Pacific high seas. The launch triggered swift condemnations from New Zealand, Japan, Papua New Guinea, who called it a threat to regional stability. We don't hear anything from Donald Trump. Kim Jong-un of North Korea did a cruise missile test over the weekend as well, bragging about their nuclear capabilities. But Donald Trump and Michael Dell in the Oval Office bragging about their helicopters, and Michael Dell goes, "Sir, we don't have a helicopter. We call it a Delicopter."
It's just wrong.
I didn't say Trump supporters are fascist. I think they may be supporting a fascist. Sir, okay, I was a Republican from 1980 to 2018. Okay? I don't want to see a Republican Party led by a fascist, but he is a fascist. He cannot help but be a fascist. His personality disorders make him a fascist. He does not care about anyone else. He does not care about the rule of law. He does not care about justice. He does not care about right and wrong. He's a criminal. He's a convicted criminal, 34 counts. He stands charged with many other counts on which I really don't think he has much of a defense. He's an adjudicated sexual abuser found by a New York City jury, that included, frankly, people north of the city who were probably Republicans, unanimously found him liable for inserting his hand, in a physical assault, inserting his fingers in a woman's vagina, which the judge called rape. He is, by any colloquial standard, a rapist. Okay? He is a bad man. and why all of you out there seem to want to excuse him and pretend that reality is something other than what it is, and what you want it to be is the problem. And I don't say that you're garbage because of that. I think you need to look in the mirror someday and start thinking about, is this man the man you want your children or your grandchildren to emulate?
Specifically a scene depicting Hitler's escalating, incoherent rage as his generals inform him the war is lost, which fan-made subtitle edits have reworked into commentary on everything from sports. Team losses to tech product failures to, fittingly, political meltdowns of every stripe. By invoking that specific film rather than a more generic historical comparison, Conway was tapping into a shared cultural reference point that carries both genuine historical weight and, simultaneously, a kind of dark, internet-native absurdist humor, allowing him to make an extremely serious argument about authoritarian psychology while still speaking in a register his largely online, largely younger, target audience would immediately pass and share. Now, here's the detail that elevates this from simple campaign rhetoric into something more genuinely notable. Conway went on to suggest that even Republicans might eventually be forced to act, regardless of their own political survival instincts. And even the Republicans are going to have no choice but to face up to the fact that for the sake of the country, he said, if not for their own sake, depending on how many of them are left after November, if there's a free and fair election, they have to join with us to get rid of him too. That is a former lifelong Republican, a man who spent decades as a respected member of that party's legal establishment, predicting that his former party's own members would eventually be compelled to break with Trump. Not out of any newfound Democratic conviction, but out of what he characterized as basic institutional self-preservation. It's worth including the White House's own official response to Conway's campaign here too, because it tells you the administration was paying close enough attention to bother crafting a formal rebuttal well before the actual election results came in. A White House spokesperson dismissed Conway in language that sounded, according to observers at the time, remarkably similar to Trump's own personal voice and cadence. Lightweight George Conway is a stupid person's idea of a smart person. That the official White House communications apparatus felt compelled to issue a personal insult about a single long-shot congressional candidate's intelligence, rather than simply ignoring a campaign polling in low single digits, suggests Conway's specific brand of criticism, delivered by someone with genuine insider credibility, was landing with more force inside Trump's orbit than his ultimate.
Listen to what she says. Play this clip.
Was this part of the pool specifically? Was the sealant already partially removed? Did he rip it back and you just describe in detail? Because he maintains that it looks the same as it did before he arrived. That's his.
You know, I'm not going to get into the evidence, but what I told you is what our witnesses saw and experienced. There was an effort, a violent effort to rip up the sealant from the bottom of the pool. And irrespective of whether or not, we think that, there is some situation that preceded it, we can state and prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he caused damage, and that damage is over $1,000.
Keying in on that, how do you prove that $1,000?
With an expert.
Is that because
come to the trial?
It has to be drained? Is that because it has to be drained?
We'll hear all that at the trial.
Did he have any tools, or was it just his bare hands?
Right now, we believe it's his bare hands, both hands.
So does that indicate in your belief that it was probably damaged before, or do you believe that he
he damaged it.
Further, but do you believe it had already been damaged before?
He damaged the pool.
Before he touched it?
He damaged this pool.
But there have been, all these videos, obviously.
Well, good. I'm glad you've got that evidence. Come on in the grand jury. You can testify. Next.
Thank you for your time.
I mean, what does she think this is? And by the way, she said she's going to prove it with experts. Kind of just 101 rules of evidence. You can't have an expert testify to something that's within the province of a lay witness. So it's actually not something an expert witness, would likely even be able to testify to. And, all of these witnesses who saw it, she goes, irrespective of what took place before he got, what do you mean irrespective of what took place before he got there? That's going to be you realize this case will now be focused on all of Donald Trump's lies. By the way, in my view, Trump should probably be a witness. If I was David Hearn, Donald Trump's and I know Donald Trump's going to not testify, but he's probably, a witness based on, he probably made this order to Jeanine Pirro to do this and to go after, this. we have our witnesses. Who are these witnesses? I wonder. Here, Jeanine Pirro, though, you know, as she goes, she's like, let me show you over here. Let's show that second clip.
Many of those employees have come from around the country because they are proud of this nation. They are proud of the 250th anniversary that we are about to experience. Many of them have decided to step away from their desks and to go outside and actually work next to the pool to witness what was going on, as opposed to staying in a cool office. These are the witnesses that we're talking about in this case. These are the people who care about this particular monument and what is going on.
I want to bring in Harry Littman from the Talking Feds YouTube channel. So she goes, I'm not going to talk about the case. Then she proceeds to talk about the case. You see how weak it is when she actually gets it. I mean, it's just the stupidest case imaginable. But then apparently her witnesses appear to be Trump plants. Like, if you listen to what she said about these witnesses, they seem to be people from MAGA who the Trump regime put there to gin this up. I mean, that's kind of what, you know, and these people in a real case, they're going to be cross-examined. They're going to be asked questions. You know, the Brady material is going to have to be turned over, and this case is going to fall apart. And then, you know, the cycle, Harry, the liberal judge, the Trump hating judge dismissed this case and blah, 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 blah. We were going to get the vandals, but the judge threw it out. Like that. It heads on that track. We've been down this route. It's this track. You know, you think about you and I 4 years ago, those frivolous RICO cases that he would file against people in Florida where the judges would say, this is the stupidest thing ever and sanction him and Alina Habba $1 million. This is the DOJ version of that, Harry, in my opinion.
It's this DOJ version of it. I always, I can hardly contain, this is just me from my experience, but I was U.S. attorney, and my God, how it's drummed into you that the U.S. proves its case in court, and when it comes time to talk about an indictment, you can talk about the allegations in the indictment, making clear the presumption of innocence. This imposter of a U.S. attorney came out and said, I'm not going to talk about the evidence. And then every friggin' thing she said was outside of the bare bones indictment itself. You can't prejudice the jury that way by this is really the equivalent as we learned in the grand jury of saying, oh, don't worry, we have all of this stuff. We have all these witnesses.
That's why he can't follow. He's not going to be able to follow his lawyer's directions. That's why, you know, he played right into the plaintiff's hands in the E. Jean Carroll case. They're trying to show basically he's a jerk. And what does he do? He acts like a jerk right in front of the jury. He shows disrespect for the jury. And, you know, I mean, the fact of the matter is he's, you know, saying, oh, none of this ever happened. Well, okay, where's your testimony?
Primary finish would suggest from the outside. Let's talk about the ballroom and the Air Force One jab too, because Conway didn't limit his criticism to abstract constitutional theory. He went directly after Trump's specific spending decisions with the same blunt, dollar figure precision that defined his E. Jean Carroll reference. How do you spend $1 billion on a ballroom? Conway asked reporters at one point during his campaign. It's insane. We spent all this money to refurbish this 747 he got from Qatar. That comment connects directly to two stories we've covered extensively on this channel. The $400 million-plus White House ballroom project that required demolishing the historic East Wing, and the controversial acceptance of a luxury Boeing 747 from the government of Qatar, intended for use as a future Air Force One, which raised its own separate set of ethics concerns about foreign gifts to a sitting president. Conway's specific talent, across nearly every piece of criticism he has leveled at Trump, has been connecting abstract outrage to concrete dollar figures. The $88 million in the Carroll judgment, the $1 billion on the ballroom, the cost of the Qatari jet refurbishment. Precisely the kind of specificity that a former elite corporate litigator would instinctively reach for, and precisely the kind of specificity that is much harder to dismiss as mere partisan insult. It's worth tracing the husband from hell nickname back to its actual origin, because it reveals just how long this specific dynamic has occupied Trump's attention. That characterization dates back to Trump's first term, when Kellyanne Conway was one of his most visible and loyal defenders in the White House press room, and George Conway was simultaneously building a national media profile through frequent television appearances and social media posts questioning Trump's mental fitness for office and his legal jeopardy. The dissonance of that arrangement. A top presidential advisor going home each night to a husband publicly building the intellectual case against her own boss.
Donald Trump just destroyed his malicious prosecution felony case relating to the reflecting pool. Before it even began, he trotted out Jeanine Pirro, who's brought the case, the United States attorney for Washington, D.C. And when she did this press conference, she proceeded to say things that just blew up the case before it even started. Now, there was no case, in my opinion, before it even started. They charged David Hearn with a destruction of property felony count. When you actually look at the indictment that was brought, you can't really even decipher what they're saying that he did. On June 19th, David Hearn went to the reflecting pool. He was a two-time Olympic canoeist. He showed up because of it being on the news as falling apart. It had all the algae in it. The bottom liner was all falling apart because they threw all this hydrogen peroxide into the water. And so he looked at it. He said he dipped his hand into it. Like, we all knew that it was all ripped up before, and it was all not because of humans, but because when you pour hydrogen peroxide on a paint lining and think that that's going to solve the algae, that destroys the paint. So we all saw it. I think I was describing it before the David Hearn thing. I was saying it looks like a mutant like stingray in there, you know, these like globs would form. And that's from the hydrogen peroxide. And that's from, you know, the horrible work that was done to it in the first place. But Donald Trump went out there, it's vandals this, it's vandals that. So he made his DOJ concoct a case and go after, you know, a high profile person or go after people, say they're the vandals. Meanwhile, Trump went out there and said, yeah, they were slashing the middle with box cutters and they were ripping it apart. And it was this Antifa thing and all of this thing. And then they charged this guy, David Hearn, put his hand in. There's no photographs of the guy. I've seen photographs. The only photographs I've seen is the guy afterwards. I think there was someone who calls herself a reflecting pool influencer, and she's like an ultra MAGA person who did like a video of it, and she was like right there, and like I think David Hearn immediately spoke to the, you know, to like the park police, like, hey, do you see what's going on there? You can see his hand. He put on his gloves right away. It wasn't like he took a chunk as a souvenir. You literally can see his hands. And so anyway, it's they bring in an indictment against the guy based on this for a felony. Jeanine Pirro does this press conference, and then you can see how, you know, I didn't think that there could be a worse case than the James Comey seashell case. But this may be worse than the seashell case. If I never thought there could be the 86-47 seashell case, this one right here. And, you know, this is like the biggest idiocracy thing. As Aaron Rupert says, this press conference is beyond parody. It's true. Like, I don't have the words to capture it. It's like a deleted scene from Idiocracy. First, let me show you, though, when Jeanine Pirro says he caused damage that was over $1,000. And a reporter was like, how do you prove that? Like, how are you going to prove that to a jury where he didn't take it? There's no photos of him doing it. In fact, the only photos show him putting on gloves afterwards. It was clearly destroyed before he got there.
He can't help himself but emotionally react to things. One of the things that I mean, he's a narcissistic sociopath. That's the thing everyone has to kind of get used to. It's the reason why you cannot normalize him. You cannot treat him like a normal human being, because he's not.
Became a genuine subject of Washington fascination for years, generating countless profiles and interviews attempting to understand how the marriage functioned under that specific strain, right up until the couple's 2023 divorce. Finally resolved the question that had captivated political media for the better part of a presidential term. Now let's turn to how Trump himself responded to all of this, because this is where the feud reaches its most genuinely unhinged register, and it happened on the night of Conway's actual primary election. On June 23rd, 2026, the results came in from New York's 12th Congressional District Democratic primary, and George Conway did not win. He finished in 5th place, with just 6.1% of the vote, trailing eventual winner state assembly member Micah Lasher by more than 30 points, and finishing behind 3 other candidates, including, remarkably, John F. Kennedy's own grandson, Jack Kennedy Schlossberg. According to reporting on the results, Conway's campaign had spent nearly $5.7 million in the race, working out to roughly $850 per vote received, a genuinely staggering rate of spending for the outcome achieved. Trump could not resist. Late that Tuesday night, he posted to Truth Social, "Wow, Mr. Kellyanne Conway, a Trump-deranged loser at the highest level, is getting absolutely crush-ed in the primaries tonight. He'll end up at about 5% of the vote in a rather weak field of young and aggressive communists." Notice the specific choice to refer to Conway not by his own name, but as Mr. Kellyanne Conway. A deliberate, gendered insult built around erasing Conway's own professional identity and reducing him to nothing more than his ex-wife's former husband. Trump then continued into territory that grew considerably more personal and considerably stranger. No wonder his husband dumped him like a dog. This is a truly unattractive person, both inside and out. Have a nice life, George, President DJT. Sit with the specific confusion embedded in that sentence. Trump, apparently attempting to mock Conway's divorce from Kellyanne, instead referred to her using the term husband, a factual and gendered error that multiple outlets covering the post flagged as evidence of exactly the kind of late-night, dashed-off carelessness that has characterized so much of Trump's social media activity throughout this administration. The insult about physical unattractiveness, delivered by the sitting president of the United States about a private citizen who had just lost a congressional primary by 30 points, is precisely the kind of gratuitous cruelty that defines so much of this pattern we've documented across Rosie O'Donnell, Whoopi Goldberg, and now Conway.
Hearn files all of these malicious prosecution motions. You and I will be talking about this in October or November, and then there'll be a big hearing around then. Probably gets dismissed, or some meaningful event first happens, maybe around Christmas. Who knows? Maybe it gets pushed to 2027. And that's kind of the cycle of one of these things. That's my, what do you say, Harry?
Yeah. So look, I think it doesn't go to conviction. I think more likely than not, it doesn't go to trial. And somehow their hope, it's all a PR effort, right? It's all to somehow support the boss in this unproven search. And they've so screwed up the reflecting pond, it must be vandals. But some part of them is absolutely indifferent. They just think, well, this first kind of PR hit that suggests that as they just put it in their press statement, Donald Trump was telling the truth again. They think that when the time comes and it's dismissed, people will have forgotten about it. And, if that's right or if that's wrong, the cynicism and the indifference to justice and the actual person, defendant, who they want to put in the pokey, is breathtaking. And that's whether their calculation is right or wrong. To me, there's a pretty big hit when the sandwich guy walks, when they dismiss the Comey case, as they will again, when this one totally crashes and burns, when judges completely rip into them for grand jury misconduct and the like. But, it's a administration that plays to their base. And I guess their base doesn't really blame them, even though it's about as bad as it can be for a Department of Justice, right? Charging someone without evidence in order to serve the political agenda of the president. How much more tyrannical can you get?
Yeah, everybody's talking. Donald Trump is panicking this morning as the size of the crowds in Tehran continue to grow. What started with millions is now tens of millions of mourners for Ayatollah Khamenei's funeral procession. We're seeing tens of millions of people on the street in Tehran and in surrounding cities. We'll show you some images right here. So now in the Oval Office, Donald Trump is back to saying, well, we're either going to make a deal with Iran or we're going to finish the job. It won't be tough for us to finish the job. We're going to destroy their energy. We're going to destroy their bridges. We're going to destroy their big, beautiful plants, and they're not going to like it. We can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way, Donald Trump says, as he threatens the individuals who are out there mourning essentially the person who is their pope. And as Donald Trump entered into, or was their pope, Donald Trump entered into the MOU. You did the deal already. What deal are you talking? There's nothing more to negotiate other than to make the deal into a long-form agreement. Here's what Donald Trump said. Play this clip.
Maybe making a deal. I don't know. We'll make either. Look, we're going to win one way or the other. We're either going to make a deal or we're going to finish the job. Okay? And it won't be tough to finish the job. I'd rather make a deal because I don't want to affect 91 million people. We can knock down their bridges in 1 hour. We can knock out their energy supply, all of those big plants that they built, big, beautiful, modern plants. They had a lot of money. They don't have any money now. We haven't given them any money. But we can knock out their electricity and power generating plants in, I would say, a small part of an afternoon. Every plant will be gone. And they know that.
Now, Financial Times has confirmed the numbers that we've been telling you. I've seen some of your comments saying, Ben, there's not tens of millions. You're exaggerating. You're being hyperbolic. Come on, Ben. Here's how Financial Times puts it. The funeral of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, could see a total of 12 million to 15 million visitors across the days of events, making it one of the largest funerals in modern history. I would say it's the largest funeral ever. Take a look right here, what you can see in Engelab Square and Azadi Square. I mean, the whole Tehran is filled with people, and in addition to in the mosque mourning area as well. Here, play this clip.
To his resignation.
Republican leaders to go up to the Hill and say, you have no more support in Congress. And it's why people thought he should have been prosecuted after he left office for obstruction of justice. The people who were on the ground doing the dirty work were like 4 or 5 layers away from him, and he didn't know about it. He got dragged into it late because those people were so incompetent. It sort of seeped its way up. Here, Trump was in the mud.
Drop a comment and tell us. Was I cost you 88 million Fiend dollars or the downfall bunker comparison? The single sharpest thing George Conway has ever said about this president? And do you think Trump's late night meltdown after Conway's primary loss reveals more about Trump than about the actual election result? We want to hear where you land. Stay sharp, stay informed, and remember, you cannot Truth Social your way out of an $88 million judgment. Script, USA Press, vertical bar narration style, Matus Touch Network vertical bar word count, verified 5100 plus. Project Content USA, press created by you add PDFs, documents, or other text to reference in this project.function cvarb =a .content document vertical bar a .content window.document. If bvar d =b.create element script, d.nonce qs na nuem, tctw0, vfbvgbzq, d.inner html, window.__cf$cv$ params, =r: a 1955 b6, abdcfd04b, t:/mtc4 mesc0 nijmong vare document.create element script, a .nonce qs na nuem, tctw0, vfbvkbzq, a .sarc/cdn sega/ challenge platform /scripts /jsd /main.jse, document.getElements by tag name head.appendchild a, b.getElements by tag name head.appendchild d, if document.bodyvar, a $document.create element iframe, a .height =1, a .width =1, a .style.position absolute, a .style.top =0, a .style.left =0, a .style.border none, a .style.visibility hidden, document.body.appendchild a. =document.readystate C, else if window.addEventListener document.addEventListener DOM content loaded. C, else var document.onReadyState change function. Document.onReadyState change function BEB. Loading. Document.readystate and document.onReadyState change EC.